I'm joined now by Polish MP Aleksandra Wiśniewska, here to talk with us at Defense 24 Days. Thank you very much for joining us, and welcome here on TVP World.
Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely. Now, we heard today from both the Minister of Defense and the Minister of Foreign Affairs that the EU needs to play an increased role in building defense capacity in production. And some of the ideas surrounding that are making some of the funds in the post-pandemic recovery fund available to bolster Polish industry. So exactly what's being discussed on that front, and how is Poland going to lobby in the EU for that to happen?
Yeah, so ladies and gentlemen, I think, one of the issues that we had increasingly been facing in Europe, and one that our current government is trying to address, is that for too long, as the European Union, we've been relying on cheap security, So we have to step up dramatically when it comes to our defense spending. And as you know, Poland is currently spending 4.04% of our GDP in 2024 on defense capabilities, on modernization plan, on technical modernization. But then as well, we have to also step up as Europe, not only when it comes to the percent of spending, where 2% in NATO should be a floor, the floor, not the ceiling, and that is something that I'm sure is going to come up in the NATO Washington summit, and that we as Poland will push for when it comes to our allies, but also when it comes to sheer volume. And also when it comes to common understanding that perhaps there is a need for a European Commission of Defense, a new position to be created on the level of the EU to coordinate the technical capabilities of our nations. Also, Poland is stepping up in joining the European Sky Shield Initiative. One thing which we see increasingly in Ukraine, right, is the insufficiency of the air defense system. The number one thing that our colleagues in Ukraine are advocating to us, and I've just returned from Kiev, in fact, is the Patriot system, So this is something that Europe has to really prepare for. And just today, we've been discussing the transatlantic relations as well. And obviously, given the upcoming US elections, we are going to work with whoever is going to be elected and whoever will sit in the White House. But at the same time, in parallel, we as Europe, have to really become increasingly strategically autonomous. And that might take time. So we have to be a responsible leader of the NATO's eastern flank. And I'm sure that our current government is working towards that. Yeah.
I'm really glad that you brought up the fact, the situation concerning air defense. Now, President Zelensky has said, we remember seeing 3 missiles enter our Polish territory. Western Ukraine is frequently targeted. Why is the government not taking a more proactive role in eliminating these threats before they enter Polish airspace? And if that means coordinating with Ukrainians to shoot down missiles over Western Ukraine, why is the Polish government reluctant to do so?
So, currently the Polish government, I believe, is doing the most, from the all EU allies. And just in fact, having returned from Kiev, having spoken with Vice Prime Minister Irina Vereshchuk, having spoken with Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs, having spoken with Vice Prime Minister Kubrakov, we understand that our interests greatly align. And there was a missile indeed that at some point crossed into Polish territory. It was flying about 40 seconds, I believe, I have not worked on that dossier in particular, but one thing which we very strongly advocate, is for the Patriot system as soon as possible to be delivered to Ukraine. Currently, Germany has committed one. We have only 2 batteries at present, borrowed from the Americans at the Yeshonka-Rzeszów airport. And currently, when you look at our estimations, we estimate that approximately 25 of the Patriots would be sufficient, for entire Ukraine. But in fact, 7 for now would even suffice. So we see that, Russia has regained slight initiative, using the time that they have received from delayed military deliveries to Ukraine. And they've also increasingly are targeting as well the railway systems, which happened at the beginning of the war in Kramatorsk, in Donetsk in the east, and right now is happening again to target the potential arrival of the new military aid that we've been waiting for. But Poland is very strongly advocating for increased military assistance, for increased humanitarian assistance as well, and also for a new Marshall Plan for Ukraine. That's something what I have been saying as well in the panel is that, we've been very grateful to see the supplemental bill passed in the United States. However, to be frank, what Ukraine currently needs, is a new Marshall Plan for Ukraine fit for the 21st century challenges, where we understand, that it might take a huge investment, a lot of investment from the private sector as well, and hopefully Poland, as culturally very close partner, and geographically, obviously a natural ally to Ukraine, will be able, with the Polish companies, to as well participate in that process. But in order for us to start reconstructing and demining, currently about 30%, 174,000 kilometers square of Ukrainian territories are mined. Ukraine is the most mined country in the world at present, In order to do that, they have to have a good air defense system.
Yeah. Right. Now, well, if we look in the United States, election year, both parties are kind of standoffish when it comes to Ukraine. We did get the $61 billion passed, but if we look, let's look through the end of the year. Is it likely that there will be no further support for Ukraine until the elections happen? Or what is your outlook as far as the United States goes? What's important to both parties here? Yeah.
I think that it's extremely important that this issue comes up in the NATO Washington summit. And just tomorrow, in fact, we're hosting, and I'm hosting, as the head of the Polish American parliamentary group, a delegation of 22 legislators from Massachusetts, that come, and we're trying to advocate, for the common support to Ukraine, and for us to really understand that, it's not about one bill or another. It's not the bill that has passed. It's tremendous that we managed to defeat the political stalemate that happened at the level of the Congress. But, it would be dishonest from me if I were to say that we were not greatly disquieted, to see also the presidential elections upcoming in the US hijacking slightly, the global architecture of global security. And we cannot allow for that to happen. And one question that is perhaps slightly bold, but I think we have to start asking, is the counterfactual, what if Kyiv falls? What would be even the economic cost to the average Polish taxpayer, to the average American taxpayer as well, to sustain the shape of the world that might occur, the political disarray that will follow, the emboldened China in Taiwan, etc. If suddenly we're not going to have Ukraine fighting for its life, but we're going to have victorious Russia at our border. And even though I'm convinced, and I saw the bravery of Ukrainians, I served in Ukraine as a humanitarian aid worker, I'm convinced that Ukrainians are fighting, and with every single missile falling on the civilian infrastructure, their resolve to emerge victorious is even stronger. The current military support has been a drip.
Yep.
Barely sufficient, and we also have 14.6 million people that require continued humanitarian assistance. So even though the war is currently entering a far more difficult phase, today is the 802nd day of the war since the invasion. 24th February, the humanitarian needs are not decreasing, The displacement, people freezing to death in winter in areas where the energy infrastructure have been so bombed that there's no heat anymore. We have to be aware of that as well, So we have to sort of combine the military aid with the humanitarian aid, with the continuous advocacy for the increased European defense capabilities. And I really hope that Poland can play a critical role in that.
Now, I'm going to ask you a question. You're a politician.
Yes.
I've seen since the very beginning, I know you've seen this too, that the popular tag phrase is for as long as it takes. Are you hopeful that politicians will finally decide the next part of the equation, which is to do what?
Yeah.
And to accomplish a goal, to set out a goal. And if that's victory, then they need to clearly state it.
Absolutely.
And direct the military to provide the right equipment to allow that to happen?
That's an excellent question, Don. And this is, in fact, what I've been addressing to our French colleagues in the parliament in Paris during the Paris Security Conference, is that the phrase supporting Kyiv, supporting Ukraine for as long as it takes is too vague, We kept repeating it, but what does it mean exactly, In fact, we have to make it far more precise, and I believe the precise goal here is victorious Ukraine and defeated Russia on the territory of Ukraine, Currently, Russia is not fighting Ukraine, it's fighting the European values, it's fighting democracy on the Ukrainian territory, And the best strategic investment of the EU and of Poland is victorious Ukraine and defeated Russia on the territory of Ukraine. And now we have to match that ambitious and difficult to attain goal, with the military plans and with difficult policy decisions that might require opening up a discussion on military conscription across Europe, on perhaps formation of the European legions. That's something that Minister Radosław Sikorski has also mentioned in his expose, formation of voluntary force of perhaps 5,000 to 10,000 of European forces capable of deployment, European white helmets, if you will, that in order for us, to be independent also of potential, decreasing American involvement, that I hope will not happen, but we have to be prepared, So absolutely making that goal far more precise. To me, that is defeat of Russia on the territory of Ukraine, and the formula of peace of President Zelensky that is Ukrainian-led, and we have an upcoming conference, and hopefully NATO, on NATO summit in Washington, we'll also be able to discuss that. Yeah.
Right. Well, I wish you the best of luck to convince as many politicians and lawmakers as possible. Aleksandra Wiśniewska, Polish parliamentarian, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much. Thank you.